Hi, welcome back to my channel. As you see from the video description, this is the little DIY on how to make the yarn octopus or yarn rag dolls. So I'm going to show you some basic. This is all with Dollar Tree products. I've got them here. I'm hoping I didn't forget anything, but I'll be changing the view from my hands to my face because some of the demonstrations will require you to see me doing it, I guess. And I can't really do that from here because of the size. Now I do have a ruler just for the sake of, you are going to need a ruler to measure, I guess, if you want. I wanted to show you. You're going to need a piece of foam core board, cardboard, a game board, anything that you're going to be wrapping your yarn around. Now, this one here is, as you can see, 12.5 inches, and I was able to make an octopus of this size, if you can imagine, using the small styrofoam ball. I wanted to make one that was bigger. This is actually a good size. 12.5 is a good size for the rag doll. The octopus is fine too, but this is much smaller than what I had wanted. Okay, and so that will give you an idea. To make the octopus with the longer legs, I'm actually going to be using one of the tri-fold boards from the Dollar Tree, but you could use, a flat checkers board, those game boards when they're folded in half, the long ways, a piece of cardboard, whatever it is you have on hand, because these are yours, and once you play around with it for a little while, you get an idea of what size they make. Some of the other materials you might want to consider using would be some ribbons. I don't recommend anything wider than this right here. Which does it say on here? 3/8 of an inch. Anything wider, you're not going to get a nice little bow. I think these actually, the 1/8 inch ribbons, I think are the best for this, for tying off. The 3/8 inch also works pretty well, especially for the dolls. Okay. You could also use buttons for eyes and to glue onto the clothing. These are a no-sew, but you can up the notch a little bit by sewing some things, but this is a no-sew. These tiny rubber bands, and it's important to have those, and these rubber bands. You're going to need both. Okay, and then your yarn. Now this, I use the chenille, and it's very soft, but it does shed a lot. When you cut it, it creates a lot of fuzz and lint. Very easy to clean up afterwards, but it is a little bit, it sheds a lot more than I realized, but I still love the way I feel. That's what this one's made from. It's very soft, very nice. And then any other color yarn that you want, hair color, skin color, take all those things into consideration, or any other bright color for your octopus. They could literally be any color you want them to be. You're going to need some googly eyes, whatever size you want. The larger your octopus, the larger you're going to want to make the eyes. And the dolls, we could be in the, I also remember finding these with the eyelashes and the eyelids. Those are kind of cute. I haven't seen these recently. These are things I've had on hand for a few years. Oh yeah, and here's some pink. And then these are the 2/8 inch two-piece styrofoam balls. Okay. Or the 4-piece 1.9 inch. This is what I have in here. Okay, I wanted to make the octopus with the larger ball, but it really made the legs very short, so I realized I had to go with the smaller ball. So I'm going to do an octopus using the larger styrofoam ball today, and so that's why I'm going to go with a longer board. And of course, you are going to need scissors, and also, which I don't have here, some hot glue or some crafting glue that will set well, like Aleene's tacky glue, something like that, that won't absorb into the yarn. Elmer's glue and school glues, those tend to just soak right into the yarn. I think hot glue is your absolute best bet here. Okay, so this again was a piece of foam core board. Now you could take just the foam core board. This was a scrap that I had left over, and I was like, you know, let me try and use that. But the foam core board, and it's find a side that's long. This makes this 12.5 inch. I'd say try to go for even 2 feet if you're going to get. Let me measure this one right here. $24. Yeah. The foam core boards are about 25 inches long, and that's about what it is I want to use for this. So, all right, I went and picked up some more yarn that I had in my collection. They have a lot of really pretty pastels. For our little octopus today, I think I'm going to go with probably this blue. Yeah. I like this blue. Very nice. And it's close to Memorial Day, so you just find the end here. There we go. Now to start this, I'm going to switch the view now. All right, now this shouldn't take more than 1 skein of yarn for your octopus. It shouldn't take any more than that. I'm just going to, this is the foam core board. You could do it this way. Let me see. You could wind the yarn this way. Let me check and see what the length is on this. I think I'm going to do it the longest way, which is why I wanted you to see this. Let's see, that's 12. Um, 18.5 if you're doing it horizontal this way. Or it's 25.5 this way. So I'm going to try it. That was 12.5. You know what? I'm going to try it this way. That just might be enough to give me the length that I want. Now you start, show you so you can see this. You start just by holding this down with your finger. And then you begin to wrap, get the yarn in the right place. You begin to wrap around several times. That's all you're doing, is you're wrapping the yarn all the way around. You want to stop and end on the same end. So I started on this end, and when I think I've got enough on there, and you're going to want to wind this around almost until you're completely and totally finished with the skein, if not going through the whole skein. I didn't quite use the entire skein. Let's just say try going around 75 times. See if you can wrap it around 75 times, and if it doesn't, it should make it to, because I did 75 and I had some left over with the chenille one, my little sample here. Okay, 50 to 75 times. And the more you wrap, the thicker things are going to be. Okay? So, all right, I've got this one wrapped around. I'm getting ready to cut. And I do want to point out, you want to do this tight enough that you've got some, you don't want to do it too loose, but you also don't want to do it too tight, because this is what naturally begins to happen from the wrapping. And so just do your best to be careful. You can always trim these at the end to make, and it's not always going to be that way. Things are not always going to be as perfectly as you think they're going to be. And you always have the ability to trim up and do things to make them even. I'm not a perfectionist, and I don't know how to do this perfectly. If someone else has really good tips or ideas, if you've done this thing before, I would love to hear them. So now I've cut it on this end, and the beginning was on this end too, right here. You see that? All right. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to grab a piece and slip it under. And in actuality, I recommend probably making this a long piece so that it can blend in with the rest of the yarn. I'm just going to make it extra long because, again, I said I could always trim it. And now, as we have this underneath, we're just going to slip it off the board. Okay, keep this in your hands because you don't want to get them mixed up. And this is where you could, all right. Okay, so you have it. You have your yarn right basically towards the middle, and then tie this off. I guess you can do the best you can to tie this as in the center as you can. Make it. You could leave it on the board and do this step. You could leave it on the board and cut the strings at this step, but I've never been able to get an even cut on these. And move your hand in there through these loops at the bottom. Okay, now we're going to get the scissors and just cut straight across the middle. Okay, so we've tied it here, we've got these dangling. We're going to blend those in with the rest of them. But I'm just going to get my scissors and cut straight across. Okay. You can comb your fingers through it. You're going to see that there's going to be some uneven pieces. That's not that big of a deal unless that just really drives you absolutely bonkers. But you see already there's some pieces. These are the ones that you tied off, and you can certainly trim those later. Now we're going to flip it over and find the center. Okay. Because now, see the middle where it's tied off right there? I'm flipping it over. Now we're going to get our styrofoam ball, stick it there, stick it in the middle, just like this, and flip it over. Okay. This one won't have legs quite as long as I wanted, but you're going to want to take a little time to arrange and comb the yarn spread it out evenly over the styrofoam head. If you don't have a styrofoam ball, I remember as a kid just grabbing paper and wadding up paper or scraps of fabric, something like that. Okay, so there's our head and there's the legs. All right, and this is where your large rubber band comes into play. You could use yarn to wind around this. You could use ribbon. I find that the rubber band seems to hold it very securely about 3 times. And of course, over this, you could then tie a nice ribbon. Okay, now you can trim those dangling pieces that are too big. Oops. Continue to comb through so you get them nice and even. Okay, you can trim that up later as well. And then of course, you're going to take each of these, section them off into 8 sections, and then you just braid them and tie them off with these. And then you'll be adding eyes and ribbon around the neck. So section these off. Let me turn this around so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I've got my little octopus all spread out, and this is where you can look and see if one tentacle is thicker than the other, and evenly and spread them out. I'm just going to begin, and for little ones who are learning to braid, this is a good activity for them. Okay. Now, if you don't have ribbon and you don't want to go through an extra expense, you can use a different colored yarn or the same color yarn, scraps and pieces. I didn't quite use all of the blue yarn. I think a different color yarn makes it easier to manage. But this is a great activity if you have little ones who are learning how to braid, fine motor skill, you know, development. And it's a fun activity you can do with your child. If, again, you're going to find that some of the ends of the yarn are not even, that's okay. You can trim those up later. Okay. Oop. Okay, that was more than I wanted. And of course, ribbon or another color piece of yarn will cover this. Let me show you how that looks. And of course, you can embellish these however you want. You want to hot glue flowers or seashells on this, that's fine. This is just the basic. And see each, and then of course you would trim these up after you've completed all the tentacles, or you could just leave them dangling like that. Okay, and then you just complete and continue to do this step until you're finished. All right, I'm finishing up the last tentacle. Now, if you're one of those people who is really good at math and calculating and all that stuff, you can take the number of times that you've wrapped the string around the board. And of course, when you cut it in half, that's double the amount of string. So if you did it 50, then you have 100 strings. And then you can divide that by 8 and get an even number of strings per tentacle. That's too much work for me. I just like to eyeball it. And make sure that the number of times you wrap it around is divisible by 8. That's too much for me. And although that's a good math thing for kids, if you're going to do this as a fun activity, but also help them with their division and, you know, that sort of thing. Eyeballing, it's just fine for me. Okay, I'm finishing off this last one. It's also good to check periodically because as with yarn, you can have a stray one here and there that gets left out. Yep, I don't have any strays. Let me get this last bit of yarn. I'm not measuring the yarn either. I'm just clipping it. Okay. Now for around the neck, I think I want to go with a thicker. You could make a big bow. You could do something else. I think I'm going to do a thicker bow. That's even a little bit different. Just grab your thicker yarns, or your thicker ribbons, excuse me, can be used around the neck because it's a bigger. You see what I'm saying? I just grabbed what was closest at hand. So there, that conceals the rubber band, but now you have to decide what you're going to do about the face. All right, and so as we're deciding what to do with the face, you can grab some buttons if that's all you've got, and you really just start arranging them on, obviously to the same color, but not really. Let the child decide. You could sew them on, or you could hot glue them on, and if you don't like those holes there, you can even try to add a little extra to the eye. Okay, I think that's what we're probably going to do, but let me check 2 big eyes and see if I like that better. I like the big eyes. All right, so let's do the big eyes. Now, I've left enough room here to put a mouth. Obviously, we know an octopus does not have a mouth down there. The mouth is underneath the tentacles, so you could even put the eyes as low as here if you wanted to keep it, you know, somewhat correct for an octopus. But this is, careful not to burn yourself. And then you can grab some red yarn, or cut out a red smiling mouth from some foam, which I think would be a little sturdier. Just whatever it is you want to do to add a mouth here. And then you can, I was playing around with some stuff that I had around here. This is from a silk flower. If you wanted to add that to the top to make it like a hat or hair. Obviously they don't have those things, but that's fun. You could do a bow here or even here if you didn't have it tied around the neck, depending on what you wanted to do. Hot gluing flowers up here, or maybe even making like a little crown of flowers, especially if this is a girl, you're making it to be a girl. Just however you want to embellish this is great. And then of course, a great use for this would be not just as a toy, but it could be something to hold hair barrettes. You've seen these, I'm sure, in other places. They make them all the time. And that's a cute way to store the hair barrettes. Just a fun little activity, or it could just be a toy that sits on the bed. I remember when I was growing up, used to see these things all the time. So, I mean, it was a trendy thing. So it's kind of a vintagey little thing to do. All right. Well, I hope that gets the creative juices flowing. Once again, I said you can trim these so they're even. I just left them the way they were. All this was Dollar Tree product. All of it was. And you can use it just as a toy, or as I said, to hold your daughter or granddaughter's hair barrettes. It's really just a fun little activity to do, and I hope it's inspired you to consider doing something like this yourself. Well, thanks again for stopping by my channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and I would love to hear your comments below. Bye until next time.